Joining us now is Sky News Washington correspondent Annelise Nielsen. Annelise, welcome back to the U.S. Report. We have to talk about these sweeping Liberation Day tariffs that have freaked out the entire world. Tell us, what is the reaction in official Washington to what Donald Trump has just dropped?
Well, look, among the Trump supporters, they say this is absolutely going to make America wealthy again. They point to the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been coming into the US from different private company investments, from foreign countries, to say, look, we are bringing business back to America. This is what we need to do from a national security perspective. This is what we need to do to make sure that we can make American jobs in all of this. But there is a lot of concern around how this is going to play out for ordinary consumers in this entire process. We've seen the stock market crash, and there's often those who say, well, it's only the rich that care about stocks. That's simply not true in America. I think it's around 60% of Americans have some kind of money in the stock market just through the virtue of having a 401k investment account, which is the most popular retirement account for Americans. So we do watch closely those maneuvers in the stock market, and it does have a bottom line for Americans who want to retire. And that's the demographic that went more Trump. And so they don't want to feel that pain at the hip pocket. They still want cheaper grocery prices. It hasn't come down since the pandemic. And now we're looking at the stock market getting into worse numbers than what we saw from the beginning of the pandemic. And those grocery prices are just as stubborn as they ever were. So there is a sense of trepidation. People have been concerned. And you hear a lot of people saying, oh, I'm going to buy this now. I'm going to buy that now because I don't know where these tariffs are going to go. And that does have a flow-on effect. People are nervous.
But then how much of it, too, is also about not just the trade deficit, but the national debt? Because one theory that I'm hearing floated around is that this is actually about bringing down the interest rates on the long-term Treasury bonds, therefore basically essentially refinancing some of that huge American multi-trillion-dollar debt. Is there any talk that this is actually the play here? Equities might have to take a hit in the same way that they did in the 80s to fight inflation, and that this is the bigger play that's happening?
I've heard that. I've heard that the reason they're targeting countries that even have a trade surplus with the US, buying more from countries like Australia than the other way around, is because they're trying to write down the value of those surpluses in themselves. I think at the end of the day, the proof will be in the pudding. And we do have to remember that he's got some very smart people around him. He's got some very seasoned people in the economy and in markets. And specifically talking about Lutnick and Bessent, the Commerce and Treasury secretaries, he specifically did not go for policy wonk types. He wanted men that have made money in the markets themselves to do the same thing in government. And we know that Trump does take this seriously. He doesn't like to see the stock market plummet in the corner of the TV screen while he's on the TV screen. He takes this stuff personally. So I think we're all hoping there's a longer game here, but it is a bit of a wait and see.
Well, it is, but it also seems to me, Annelise, that what we're talking about really is a reordering of the globalist system, which, as I spoke about in my editorial before, had stopped working necessarily for the average American person. Now, one interesting thing here is that Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who is very much of the sort of the globalist banker type mold, he has vowed to fight the new rounds of tariffs. And Anthony Albanese himself, he has said that this is not the act of a true friend. Do you think any of this condemnation from world leaders will hinder relations with Trump, or are these guys going to wind up having to come to the table simply because their own economies depend on it?
I don't think anyone's left the table. Everyone's just trying to be taken a little more seriously at the table. And we are absolutely seeing this drive towards nationalism around the world. When we've seen with Canada, the fact that their Conservatives were more than 20 points ahead in the polls, and all of a sudden now they've got a Liberal leader because he was seen to be too much of a Trump-light alternative. I know that that's said about Peter Dutton and Donald Trump, and I got to tell you, from watching Donald Trump day in, day out, he is nothing like Peter Dutton. They're not the same kind of conservatives, and they certainly don't have the same kind of personalities. I think the only people who really ever say that Donald Trump's anything like Peter Dutton just simply don't like Peter Dutton in the first place. But this is kind of our weakness for Australia right now. We don't have, like in Argentina, they have a Malay who's got so much in common with the kind of Trump MAGA movement. He's become such a hero of it. We're not on the out, we're not on the in, and this is just kind of the tricky thing is you can harangue them for a phone call all you want. You get on the phone call, then what do? It's not necessarily going to be in our interest even to get Anthony Albanese on the phone. So we're just kind of in a tough spot, and I think it's going to be one of those things for Australia where we're just going to have to ride this out as best we can while we see what the fallout is in America, because at the end of the day, they are America first. This is exactly what they promised they were going to do. We're here now, and the only thing they really care about is what's happening in America. They truly do not care what's happening overseas, and they don't care about any traditional alliances. That's simply just not their approach anymore.
Wow, fascinating shift in the global tone here. Hey, I want to stick in America, though, with another move here. One of Trump's latest executive orders requiring, get this, proof of citizenship in order to be able to register to vote. Didn't sound like this is a completely crazy idea to me, but the Democrats here, they're not buying it. Here's Democrat House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries outraged over this.
In that referendum in Wisconsin, then you should have brought the SAVE Act, which is a voter suppression bill that we strongly oppose, to the floor this week. You could have done it. Could have done it today. You could do it tomorrow. We dare you to bring the SAVE Act to the floor. We'll have that discussion. That's voter suppression.
Now, basically, the implication here is that proving your citizenship, that's voter suppression. This seems like another one of those 80-20 issues that Trump is going to wind up forcing the Democrats to be on the wrong side of.
Well, look, yes and no. I completely agree that voter ID, it's been completely overblown as being a voter suppression issue when, frankly, anyone who is voting should have to prove their identity as they do it. We know that otherwise you're just leaving yourself open for so much to be taken advantage of in the system. But most Americans, we also know what we're talking about 80-20, most don't have a passport. Many Americans will never travel out of the country. And so I kind of wonder just how practically how this is going to work. If you don't have a passport to show up and register that you're an American citizen, do you need your birth certificate? Do you need your social security number? We know foreigners get social security numbers. How are they actually going to practically get people to prove their citizenship when they do register to vote? Will it be grandfathered in, or is this an old system? And so I think most Americans would support the idea, but I bet when it comes to actually doing it, they're going to hate it. So that would be my pick, James.
Fair enough, Annelise. I guess the last thing the U.S. needs is more bureaucracy. Appreciate your time, as always. See you next time.
Thank you.